AI needs infrastructure to run. AI needs data to operate on. AI needs to be able to integrate with different services to be able to procure information so that you can build efficient models and, address the corresponding use cases. Imagine it's really hard to actually gather the models are as good as the underlying data, right? And so SaaS is fundamentally enabling and fueling that way and forming that foundational pillar for AI to run at massive scale with getting the data it needs.
Thanks, Kamal, for being here. Thank you so much for making the time. I've read about your company OmniStrate and wonderful piece of innovation in terms of bringing and making SaaS easier for a lot of entrepreneurs. Can you tell us a little bit about the idea behind OmniStrate and what it does exactly for our
Absolutely.
audience?
Thanks for having me. Great pleasure to be here. I think the one of the things that we noticed over the years is we need a way to be able to distribute and monetize the software quickly. Traditionally, there have been an on-prem solutions, licensing solutions, or more other business models. But in the last 10 years, SaaS has essentially become a de facto standard for distributing your software. But building SaaS has been hard and time-consuming process. And what we are out there is to make it easy for everyone to build their SaaS.
Mhm.
And what does it mean to build their SaaS? Like you have a software, let's say a MySQL, and you want to build a MySQL cloud managed offering. How would you do that? You will need a way to be able to, for your customers to deploy, to be able to scale, to be able to monitor, to be able to patch, to be able to bill, to be able to, operationalize and automate the whole day-to-day tasks associated with it, to be able to have visibility, to be able to patch. All of these things and many more has to be solved.
Mm.
But doing that and building all of those things takes a lot of time and energy.
Yeah. But why not have it on-prem? What is the limitations of having it on-prem?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, on-prem is still a model. I think the challenges with the on-prem is, as a business, you have no, like, first of all, it doesn't like you it's a licensing usually associated with the licensing model, and so you are essentially giving the software to the person and have no idea, no visibility as a service provider on how your customers are using it. What are they finding it useful? What are they not finding it useful? What are the workload patterns? Right? Or what are the challenges they are running into? I think the modern day of era, in the era that we are in with all the artificial intelligence and latest trends, I think we are at the cusp of the world where we want to provide the beautiful experiences to our customers, and we want to provide the experiences where our customers are ahead. We are ahead before our customers run into any issues. We are ahead of providing them more and more value, and being able to establish that feedback cycle. The SaaS is a de facto way because you are establishing that model. You're providing a fully managed experience so that you as a consumer don't have to worry about the technologies that the provider is offering, and you can focus on your business application. With a licensing model, you are taking the operational burden along with you of managing that software. Now, in addition to managing your own software, let's say if you procured 100 on licensing on-prem thing, you have to run them, manage them. If you run into any issues, either have to call the support and reach out and constantly deal with the patching them and maintaining them. The SaaS basically avoids and takes care of all the way. So you can focus on the abstractions above and really focus on providing more and more value and build those intelligent services for your customers.
Correct. And traditionally, how was it done? Like when it comes to what OmniStrate offers is essentially taking a cloud-first approach.
Correct.
Traditionally, how has it worked, and where did you find the limitations in some of these areas?
Yeah, so open source, for example, has been long around, right? And has been one of the distribution model. And it works great to be able to build a community, to be able to evangelize with a broader audience out there. And each of these business model, by the way, or each of these distribution model have their own value proposition, and you don't have to stick to one. Like, for example, a lot of open source companies adopt SaaS as another distribution model for monetizing, for making it easy for their customers to adopt and get the feedback. right? So open source has been the one of the distribution model. On-prem licensing model has distribution model. The SaaS has been, in additional distribution model. And within SaaS, you see subscription-based thing, pay as you go, and so there are variants of these models are appearing. But the more and more trend in the last 10 years, if you see, today the company is starting that, nobody's thinking about on-prem. We are fundamentally moved past that curve,
Yeah.
right? And
No application is
Yeah.
on an offline basis.
Correct.
Everything is cloud native.
Correct.
Especially, I think the requirement for it to be intelligent as well as have a lot of tools that call internet, the need for internet is also there, right? Overall. So how does the cloud native SaaS integration enable ease of implementation when it comes to AI and ML? Because every company wants to become an AI ML company today.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
what benefits does a cloud native SaaS provide? Plus, how does OmniStrate kind of enable it?
Absolutely. I think first of all, I would say that both the cloud native SaaS and AI both are, emerging trends in themselves. And there is this, it's just not one sided. I think the AI is fueling the cloud native SaaS growth, and the cloud native SaaS is, fueling the AI growth. So it's both ways. Now, to answer specifically, I think the one aspect, if you take a look at AI needs infrastructure to run. AI needs data to operate on. AI needs to be able to integrate with different services to be able to procure information so that you can build efficient models and, address the corresponding use cases. Now, doing that and, getting, operating at infrastructure, procuring it, managing it, maintaining it, and then getting that data, like how do you store those, like the data has to be stored in some format and for different use cases. How do you get that, and how do you retrieve information from there? How do you integrate with different SaaS services or out there? If all of these are not SaaS services, they are not services in themselves, they are running somewhere and they are no way to access, and all the world is just isolated. Imagine, it's really hard to actually gather the models are as good as the underlying data, right? And so SaaS is fundamentally enabling and fueling that way and forming that foundational pillar for AI to run at massive scale with getting the data it needs and providing that integration mechanisms with the underlying SaaS services.
Scalability.
Correct.
The entire idea or conversation around MLOps to kind of scale AI ML tools or applications or whatever that business technology is something that is kind of
Absolutely.
sped up in a lot of ways. Right?
Exactly.
But isn't it expensive in the sense that when you're hosting an entire application on cloud,
Yeah.
the retrieval, and if you are over that building AI ML, the retrieval of data takes a lot of, you have to store everything on cloud. You have to kind of probably rent those resources in that case.
Yep.
Right? For startups especially, won't that be more expensive, or am I wrong in that?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I mean, I'll answer in two pieces. Like, if you take a look at a world where cloud doesn't exist, then for businesses to start and have procured these huge data centers was a huge friction point. I think the cloud providers like AWS, GCP, and Azure really made it easy for businesses to get going and pay on the go.
Got
Right?
it.
And that's the power of the SaaS. Now, the other, if you go one step ahead, I think one of the core challenges has been, in order to take a software and build a managed offering SaaS, has been an year's worth of effort. You require highly skilled engineers, and you need them to be working and address all the pain points I was mentioning. It takes several quarters and years, right, to build those. That has been a huge operational cost, right? A resource cost, an employee cost, right? And so what we at OmniStrate is also lowering and friction, a barrier to entry there, is you don't need to spend years. First of all, you can have it in days and hours, right? With your fully managed service working. Plus, you don't have to spend all this money. You pay on the go. There is no fee to start with, and so that's the power of underlying platforms like cloud providers uh, AWS, Azure, and on GCP.
Don't
And
AWS and all of these companies already provide this service then in the sense they do provide pay on the go cloud services, etc., but they don't provide the SaaS, the setup that you are providing?
exactly. So what's happening is, if you draw the layer cake, there is a infrastructure as services, EC2, storage, EBS, compute,
Yeah,
networking, and all that stuff.
they provide that.
And
Yeah.
then there is this layer where they are saying, hey, you know what? I'm providing you solutions. So I'm giving you MySQL as a service. I'm giving you Postgres as a service. I'm giving you Kafka as a service, OpenSearch as a service. But I'm not giving you the technology where you can bring in any software that will convert into a fully managed service.
Scalable.
And that's what we are basically saying, that we are giving that and making it possible for anyone now to bring their software and build their own cloud managed offering. And it works across the cloud, across the regions, across environments. Run it in your account, your customer's account. You can choose a tenancy model. You don't have to worry about no longer about how to build these cloud managed offering, and instead focus on your core software and continue to delight your customers with the innovation.
So you're saying that cost-wise, this is more friendly.
It's much cheaper. Like, literally, there is no cost. You have no cost, no usage, $0, right?
Yeah.
Because there is no cost of AWS, no cost of OmniStrate. There's nothing.
Okay. So my understanding of these things was that, always when you are trying to rent out these pay-as-you-go models, especially when you are trying to build AI and ML applications on top of them,
Yeah.
it's really expensive for them. And while on the other hand, on-prem also has its own drawbacks, considering that you can't really have that level of infrastructure and borrow them. So then probably your understand. So from what I learned from you is that, especially when it comes to a startup or a newer setup, then going through cloud native applications and renting them is much more cheaper and easier than building an on-premise.
Yeah. So I think there's a small nuance over there. I think if you particularly talk about in terms for AI,
Yeah.
right, then I think that it's a two-step process. One is you need to have your model, and then you have your usage where people, whatever corresponding application where customers are inferring something and you're providing some value, right? But if you building the model part, I agree with you, right? That is, you are using the underlying cloud providers and their resources to build that model. That's the base cost you will pay, but that's just still far cheaper. Imagine if you have to set up your own data center, and maintain and operate that data center, and have these services like PaaS or platforms like OmniStrate, and you really need to build the entire thing. It will be years, and it will be insane amount of capital that you will require to actually get started even. Right now, that barrier to entry or friction is gone, right? You can just focus on building your model, perfecting that model,
Yeah.
right, and then start getting revenue with as you're delivering value to your customers.
Yeah, I think that's what I probably was thinking about, like especially when it comes to the AI ML aspect of it. Building a model, renting resources is really expensive sometimes, but I think the answer lies somewhere. You have to kind of go use case by use case basis.
And it's also relative in context, right? I agree with you. It's expensive. I'm not saying it's not expensive, but compared to what? Compared to not having that is even more expensive. Not having cloud provider is going to cost you 10 times more.
Yeah, that is true. The other concern is security. Everybody talks about security, especially when you're putting things on cloud. There was this roundtable which we hosted a couple of years back, and then they were discussing about whether data should be stored on-prem or cloud, and that is very crucial and fundamental to building AI on cloud native, right? And we need huge amounts of data as well, and sometimes it's sensitive data. Can you tell me a little bit about how OmniStrate steps in to ensure data security and what frameworks are needed overall to ensure that there's this safe use of data?
Absolutely. Now, I think when it comes to security, you need proper mechanisms to be in place, and you need a platform layer which basically can enable that. And those comes in various forms, right? Like there are one area or one set of knobs or controls that you need to reduce the attack of surface area of attack, right? Which can be done through some sort of a defining the network firewall, essentially, right? And typically done in cloud providers as VPC or some variants of that. Then you have things like access control to be able to reduce like who is authorized, authentication and access control. You have things like encryption to, even if like, how do you, what are the things that we can do from preventing ourselves to not let the bad cop essentially to be able to take advantage of, right? And having those DDoS attack prevention and things like that. And so my point is, a lot of those solutions, like for example, if you go to AWS as an example, we have IAM for providing the authorization. There is an Cognito. There's guard duty. Then from the VPC, like from the attack, putting the firewall in context is their VPC concept. So there are a lot of these concepts that are already enabled by the cloud providers. Now, one of the typical challenges that you have is, how do you, even in the cloud providers today, there are like hundreds of services. So often customers are confused about how do you even take advantage, how do you put together even. And that's where OmniStrate comes in, is you don't have to worry about it, that we take care of, putting these things together so that all angles from attack of surface area attack to be able to monitoring these things, like whether it's auditing, whether it's basically incident and reporting, whether that is keeping insights into observability. We provide those and put those things together as a package way. So you have it without having to do and configure these things and put stitched in these things together. And that's where it goes back to my point earlier that I was saying that cloud is offering, especially for building the managed services and cloud native applications, cloud is offering a very low level abstractions. They're offering like tools that you can pick and choose and put things together for you to build the secure solution. I think where OmniStrate comes in is more putting it together as a packaged way, and for you to have a fully built solution as opposed to trying to put those pieces together.
Got it. So which are some of the emerging sectors that are adopting cloud native SaaS? Which areas do you see more potential? Can you help us walk through some of the use cases that you have seen?
We see, serverless computing, for example. A lot of effort has been in the last decade on moving towards the serverless computing to save on resources and the cost point that you mentioned, and moving workloads where the usage is only when it is needed, as opposed to keeping the resources running. The second example we see is with AI, right? Especially with the amount of data that we have to deal with and an infrastructure that we have to deal with. There's a emerging trend on and both fueling the growth for the AI, and then AI itself is also enabling these SaaS services to become more and more intelligent, and it's having that feedback cycle essentially to build those value generating intelligent services on the top, right? And the third, I would say, like for example, edge computing is another, where how we are pushing to boundaries of then taking the cloud native SaaS to edge computing. Right? We see that with the automobiles in the car. I mean, we're talking about every day new and newer innovation in the automobile industry. We see that in the healthcare industry with better EHR systems. We see that with the retail. I mean, imagine the experience of Amazon being the number one retailer 20 years ago and where we are today. And the concept of one day shipping, the concept of today the DoorDash, right? And what the concept was 20 years ago, right? All of these have been the SaaS application. And I think if you at each point of the way, like if you say see load the even Amazon.com, there are like hundreds of microservices which are running. Each of them are running as a SaaS offerings behind the scenes, right? And so these complex SaaS solutions are powering every day-to-day sectors. You take a look at banking, right? And Razorpay, for example, in India is revolutionizing the whole fintech industry. I think if you look at the experiences, then one of the major differentiation is the experiences that Razorpay has been able to put forward and provide that fully managed SaaS experience for their customers. I think those are some of the examples. I think across the industry. So I would say the answer is across the industry, but some of the major ones that I see is like serverless computing, AI, edge computing. to really, as a next big trend fueled by the cloud native SaaS.
Correct. And as we, this industry, especially the cloud, any data driven technology industry that has been present, or any software has evolved at a very faster pace, right? What are some of the potential challenges and opportunities you see in the upcoming years, and what are some of the key trends will you observe in the upcoming? So when it comes to data or AI applications on cloud native SaaS.
If you take a look at data and AI applications, I think, first of all, one of the trends that I'm seeing, at least noticing, is in the last 10 years, if you see the rate at which new data solutions and new AI applications are now emerging, is faster than ever. I mean, if you go pretty much every other week, you will find a new database being launched. You will find many startups, I don't have the exact number, but many startups forming every week in the AI space, right? And all of them essentially will have the distribution challenge. And I think if you go back to the era before 2015, there weren't the concept of SaaS was not proven until then.
Yeah.
So when the first generation SaaS companies, data companies like Databricks, Snowflake, Confluent, these guys have proved the model. It has just revolutionized the next generation of growth, both in the data and the AI space.
Got it. On that note, thank you so much, Kamal, for making the time.
Yeah.
It was a fun conversation.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Kashyap.